So today I'm making this Avatar episode's worst to best because that's what you wanted. So the way that I've ranked all of these episodes was quite simple. I divided every season to 3 chunks of 6 and 1 of 2 and ranked them worst to best. And then I did merge sort. Video about it in the description. And then I checked the list for good measure. Also, you need to know that this is just my opinion. That's my thoughts of these episodes. But I will probably get some anger because of this list, but whatever. 61. City of Walls and Secrets. I know that you've probably thought that I'm going to put one of the less liked episodes, some for good reasons, like The Great Device or The Swamp. But no, this is the only episode in this series that I don't enjoy even a little of it. It's not a bad episode, I just hate him, mostly because of Judy. Burn her at the gibbet. But it will be expensive. I don't care. 60. The Great Device. Yeah, I know. This episode is considered the worst out of all of these. Not that there is a bad episode of Avatar the Last Airbender, but honestly, it's not that bad. It had some nice moments, but it's quite a forgettable episode. 9. Imprisoned. Now, this episode is better than The Great Device for only one reason. This part. But this episode is also kind of forgettable. 58. The Swamp. This is not that special of an episode, and felt a little bit of useless to me. 57. The Awakening. This episode is, to me, the worst of the Fire book. And, as a bonus, this is the first episode of this book. So, let's just move to the next one. 56. The Southern Raiders. Now, I don't know what your opinion on Katara on this episode. I think she's a little bit of overboard. So that's why I don't like this episode. 55. Appa's Lost Days. This one is very boring to me. Yes, this episode is heartbreaking and sad, but to drag this for a full 23 minutes is just boring. To feel sadness for 23 minutes is just not that good of an episode. 54. Winter Solstice. The Spirit World. Pandas. 53. The Avatar State. I am feeling quite bad for Aang in this episode. General Fong is a jerk. 52. The Serpent's Pass. The best thing in this episode is the Cabbage Man. Seriously. 51. Battle of the Water Tribe. From this episode I've learned one thing. Aang is a terrible actor. 50. The Firebending Masters. This episode is good, but just not good enough. South Pole. 49. The Waterbending Scroll. Wait, if they are going to the South Pole for a teacher, why would they need this waterbending scroll? Is often weird. 48. The Headband. The party was kind of cringy, but unless that, it's fine. 47. Winter Solstice, Avatar Roku. I seriously don't remember much of it. I saw it and it was nice, but this kind of an episode was done way better in the Avatar and the Fire Lord. But still, this is a good episode. 46. The Northern Air Temple. This episode is nice and clever, but the Mechanist is quite of a weak man, because he invented so many machines that can destroy these little firebending forces. 45. The Southern Air Temple. But they showed the Air Temple for too much time for my taste. There are much more interesting temples than this one, like the Western Air Temple. But we got Momo, and that's making better than the Northern Air Temple. 44. The Blue Spirit. I don't know what to say on this one. It's okay, and that's it. 43. The Painted Lady. Now this episode is making me angry for only one reason. These village people are such an insincere people. Thank her. But on the other side there's Doc, Xu, and Bushi. That, let's admit it, was funny. 42. The Avatar Returns. It's a good episode. But this episode is feeling kind of meh to me. I don't have anything other to say about it. 41. The Earth King. The Earth King is a very good character, but I just hate the Dai Li and Long Feng so much that I'm putting this episode in here. Burn them too at the gibbet. 40. Susan's Comet, the Phoenix King. A third of the way have passed and we are getting to one of the more liked episodes of this series. But I personally think that this episode does not deserve the title of Susan's Comet, because A. The comet was not appearing even for a second on this episode. B. The biggest action scene in this episode is not that appropriate for a big finale of the series. But still a good episode. 38. The Guru. I really liked this episode when I was younger, 4 to 5 years ago, because the thing is with the chakras were interesting, but now I less like it. It's more of a nostalgia episode than a watch to enjoy episode. And there's banana and onion juice. 38. The Chase. Now on one side, the action scene was awesome. On the other side, I don't think that there is a bad side to this episode. 37. Nightmares and Daydreams. This episode, I will admit, is useless. But you need to admit that the idea is really creative. And so basically all of the episode. There are people who say it's their least favorite, and I can see why. I think that it's a good episode. 36. The Library. I think that the desert and the library is just two episodes that are really connected. They have a very smooth transition from one to the other, almost as the Boiling Rock episodes. They both have the same feeling to them, that's why I put them right next to each other. 35. The Desert. דברים במדבר, במדבר דברים שבמדבר, במדבר דברים, דברים במדבר. 34. Bitter Work. This episode is not a comedy episode. This episode is mostly for progress. Even though I much prefer episodes that are funny but don't help much to the story, this episode is kind of good. 33. The Avatar and the Fire Lord. As I said in Winter Solstice Avatar Roku, I much prefer this episode. It's showing the more interesting parts over a longer time, and the friendship between Roku and Sozan was handled much better in this episode. 32. The Warriors of Kyoshi. The Warriors of Kyoshi is a very memorable episode, to me at least, but when watching it again, I realized it's not that awesome next to the next episodes. 31. The Cave of Two Lovers. This episode is very nice. Not that awesome, but the Nomans was very funny and that makes this episode much better, but they weren't enough to make this episode as good as 30. Susan's Comet, The Old Masters. Now I have a mixed thoughts on this episode. On one side, it's having a lot of good moments. On the other side, it have the same problems as the Phoenix King did, but it's much better. 28. Lake Laogai. I was really sad when Jet died. Jet was a good character. 28. The Day of Black Sun, The Eclipse.
I am a 400-foot-tall purple platypus bear with pink horns and silver wings.
Okay, whatever you say, Azula. 27. The Puppet Master. When I was younger, 6 years ago, my mom banned me from watching this series. This episode is probably the main reason for that, but it's one of the better episodes of this season. 26. The Fortune Teller. Now, I don't know where to start on this episode. From how Katara and the town people was too obsessed with the fortune teller, or how Sokka always hit himself, or even men. This episode is by no doubt awesome. 25. Return to Umashu. This episode is having the same stuff that goes with Bitter Work, but this episode is doing it much better. The scene with the tracks were just amazing. Plus, there's Boomy in this episode. 24. The Boiling Rock Part 1. This episode is nice. What do you say, episode?
Leave me alone. I'm bushed.
23. The Drill. The Drill is one of the episodes that I watched a lot. It has almost all of the ingredients to make an end to the book. If they were replacing this episode and the Crossroads of Destiny in the place in which they are arranged, I would have no problem. I don't really like the Crossroads of Destiny. By the way, speaking on it, it's quite a coincidence because number 22 is the Crossroads of Destiny. Yeah, this episode is good, but it felt like it's not that good of a last episode. Just think of it. There's this episode. Not that I am saying that this episode is bad by any mean. And there's the Side of the North and Susan's Comet, without the first two. And when looking back at it, it's just not that good. This episode is placed on this place because the result was very far from the expectations. And I mean, not in the good way. 21. The Western Air Temple. This episode is very good and is showing a lot of important stuff and things. 20. The Beach. The Beach is a very emotional episode. It is a very good episode. I just didn't like the end. Did you too, Chan? "19. The Runaway. I really like this episode, and the cheating stuff, it was funny. You've probably thought that this episode is going to be at the 30s or stuff like that, but this episode is just very good. And the runaway is actually a catchy word, like the word shenanigans. 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 Number 18. The Boy in the Iceberg. And finally, we've been to the first episode of Avatar. Wait! If you put this episode so high, doesn't that mean that you're nostalgia blind? Well, no, my dear stick figure. Because, A, if I was truly nostalgia blind, I would put this episode in a higher place. B, I was born in 2006, a little bit later than when book 1 ended. And C, as I said earlier, my mom banned me from watching the series until I was 8. And that is more than 5 years from when the series ended, so no bias from me. 17. Jet. Have I said that Jet is a good character? Because it's true. But enough to talk about Jet. He's dead. Let's talk about this episode. First, this is the only episode that has one word as his name, thus making it the shortest named Avatar episode ever. Second, Jet Gang was cool and funny. Third, Peepsqueak. The only problem is Katara, she was mean. 16. The Waterbending Master. I'm only a question. Why to destroy so much stuff? 15. The Storm. This episode is not that even in his part as episodes like Jet, but by no means a bad or even a not very good episode. 14. The Side of the North Part 1. I think almost everyone will agree that The Side of the North is an awesome ending to the Water book, but I will go to say that the second part is way better than the first part. Doesn't mean that this episode is bad, this episode is amazing, but still, I prefer some episodes more, like 13, The Deserter. This episode is just awesome, from start to finish, and feeling to want to firebend are feeling real. And so does the failure. It's just an awesome episode. I wouldn't change in it almost anything. This is what the one thinking that's a bad episode should be treated. 12. Avatar's Day. Now, this episode is not here for the action, or his emotionality. No, this episode is just hilarious. This may be the worst stuff they've visited, but this is obviously one of the funniest. 11. The Boiling Rock Part 2. This episode is overrated. This episode is overrated? But if he'll say something like that, there's no way he'll survive. But still, it's a good episode. We're in the top 10 with Zuko alone. This episode is barely related to the main story, but it's a heartwarming story. At least until the town people become jerks. 9. The Day of Black Sun, The Invasion. It's so fun to see a summary of all what they've been through. And the action scenes, of course. 8. The Blind Bandit. This episode is a very good episode to watch. The fighting scene, the great introduction, and whatever else. I don't remember bad stuff. And it gives a little bit of meaning to the swamp. 7. Susan's Comet, Avatar Ang. Of course this episode will be so high. There's just too much good things that will make this in anybody's list out of the top 20. I mean, this episode is so much good. 6. The Side of the North, Part 2. This episode is just what I will call a perfect ending to a season, at least to me. It had action, emotion, and some other things that end with TION. And that means a very good episode. 5. The Ember Island Players. This is probably the best retell of a series that I've ever met. This episode is just hilarious, and I think that this deserves 5th place. 4. Susan's Comet, Into the Inferno. Wait! Isn't this episode needed to be in a better place? I mean, it is one of the better episodes. No! This is my list, and I make it, so I am the one who say what I prefer. I mean, to me, this is an awesome episode. The problem is that it's not my favorite, so enjoy being number 4. That's a very good place to be in. 3. Sokka's Master. Shish, don't talk now. I know, this episode does nothing to the plot. But 1. Sokka is my favorite character from this series. 2. This episode is so funny that I will put it on number 1 if it was just on comedy. And 3. I mean, the fight was great. But no, there are 2 episodes that are better than that. And this episode will create a lot of argument here, even in 10th place it will. And I don't know why I put this episode 3rd and not 2nd. Oh, I know, it's probably because The King of Mashu is a much better episode. No offense, but Sokka's Master is not even in the league of these 2 episodes. This episode is just so creative. Boomy is a wonderful character, and, most important, this is the first episode of
Oh, my cabbages!
And in number 1 we have none other than the greatest of the greatest, my cheese on the pizza, the snow before the storm, the air conditioner in the summer, how many songs can you write on a stone, the bucket kicker of boredom, the best in town, 1+1 discount for every item. Now in our get to the point already. Okay. The Tales of Ba Sing Se, are you happy now? Fun ruiner. Ah, yeah, you're still here. So this episode is a very special episode for me, and as a concept, it has the greatest stories. It has emotion, it has discovery, it has comedy. What else can you ask? I'm a very bad salesman, aren't I? But still, that is the definition of a good episode. And I done. Now for some stuff that I'm about to say. First, yay, it's my 20th episode. Woohoo, yay, whatever. Second, because I'm using Paint as my current video making device, and believe it, it's not that easy, I want suggestion for a non-pixelated, free, simple, and one you can upload your drawing in an easy way, so tell me in the comments. Third, I'm currently thinking of joining a camp, but it will be later because it's already running its 5th season. I will soon make a video about suggesting my character for the 6th season, so yeah. And last but not last, is this a paradox? I've made the quicker version of this video. I mean, just the numbers and the names. This is in the description below. So, I hope you enjoy, sub and like, only if you want, and bye!